opportunity we have to gather in your name and to study your word. We pray that as we do so, you can help us to take things away from our study that will make us more effective in your service. Pray that you will continue to be with those among our number here who are dealing with health issues or other adversities. Bless them. Be with those in the morning. Pray that you continue to be with us throughout this hour. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. We're going to jump into 3 John. The assignment was look at each of the 4, John, Demetrius, Gaius, and Diotrephes, and just dig into the text and be ready tonight to talk about what are some of the things that we can learn from each one of these individuals contextually to the letter, and how might we apply some things about what we learn about their approaches, or good or bad. So that's the assignment. Hopefully that was clear. So we're going to jump in. We'll just kind of move down through. Let's start with John himself, the elder, assuming, as I think we have been, that John is the author. What do you learn about John in the context of this letter? What are some of the things, takeaways, that maybe you think are practices or behaviors that you would like to incorporate, or you think we should incorporate? What do you think? Danny? Okay. I think you're right. Do you see that in 3 John? Yeah, right there. Straight out of the gate. Beloved, I pray that in all respects. So, yeah. When you read the totality of his writing, you see that just like Paul, there are references to numerous praying. So good start. That's what we're looking for. Other Danny.
Encourager.
Okay, and kind of talk us through that.
Well, it goes back to the right following this he prays for. He asks that you may prosper, that you may be in good health, that your soul may be prospered. He finds the ways to try to make them feel good about themselves. Before he goes down here and starts giving them warnings.
Okay. So yeah, it's very typical. Before you start correction, praise is often found in these letters, and we see it right here. The first 8 verses is directed towards praise and encouragement, and that we can certainly learn from that, absolutely, as we try to model that behavior. Other thoughts?
Walk in truth.
Okay.
Keep his commandments.
Okay. There's that encouragement to walk in truth, to keep his commandments that John is living and encouraging others to do it. Good. So there's not only is there encouragement or praise for Gaius, there's continued instruction that comes out of this letter in that regard.
He uses the phrase, dear friend, at least 4 times.
Yes. Beloved, dear friend. So not only is he praising, but he's manifesting through his writing his deep love for Gaius, specifically. And we've seen that throughout his writing. So it's not just for Gaius. So what do you take away from that? What's, other than the obvious, we should love? Any thought? The one thing that comes to mind is we should be willing to express it, not just have it. But it's interesting that, so this leader, this apostle, is continually telling them that. Why? Motivate them? help them to understand where he's coming from, show his heart. And so I think it might be helpful for us to take a lesson from that, as suggested, is that not only should we pursue these types of intimate relationships, but be willing to express it, be willing to talk that way with one another. Do we do that? Larry?
It seems like there has to be a lot of antagonism with the Gnostics. So even though they're wrong, we still should love them, and we're supposed to love them. That's our relationship with God, is how we treat others. And if we're not loving our brothers, it says, then we're not loving God. So he emphasizes that. This, to me, the whole 3 books, or 3, whatever you call those, that we have to keep that relationship with God by doing what he wants us to do.
Yes, very good. Sorry, something is, I don't know what's going on with that. Can you hear that? Scrape, not good. Okay, we'll reposition. All right. Other thoughts?
We do it, and you'll know who you can and who you can't do it with, because of whatever it may be. But I think John here was demonstrating that, yes, you got to encourage people. You got to, sometimes it's just help them in their walk. You may have to lift them up, or you may have to push them down, and he's doing both here, I think.
Yeah.
He's lifting up the people, but he's also giving them a push back. Through love, you watch these people who are trying to lead you astray.
Yeah, good point. And you see that. You see love for your brethren. You see love for enemy, as pointed out. You see him praising. You see him correcting. That's all within the manifestation of love. Do you think John loved Diotrephes? Why do you think that?
Because he says to love everyone.
Okay, because he says to, but does he? What is he manifesting that would suggest that he also loves Diotrephes?
Cared enough to talk to him.
Okay, he cared enough to talk to him. He's confronting him. So we have praise for Gaius. We have confrontation for Diotrephes. So clearly he loved Gaius and didn't love Diotrephes. I mean, that's not true. It's just the opposite. He cared for him deeply enough, and here's where I think is interesting, enough to confront. Oftentimes we think the willingness to confront, or the willingness to have those difficult conversations aren't loving. It's the opposite. And I think John is demonstrating that when rebuke was necessary for Diotrephes or anyone, he had the love, concern, to do something about it. And he also understood the stakes that was going on with Diotrephes, that action needed to be corrected. So I find that interesting. Other thoughts about that, or anything else about John's role in this? Yeah.
2 John and 3 John, he mentions he wants to speak to them face to face. So he really does want to have that personal relationship with them. And, rebuke or correction comes across a lot different in person than maybe just a letter.
Great point. So, what's easier? Text someone and say, hey, shape up. Or go knock on their door and talk to them face to face. Well, number one, that takes more effort. That takes more willingness on your part. It is more of an uncomfortable thing. We can fire off a text, may or may not get a response, and say to ourselves, well, we did all we could right there. Really? You did all you could. Do we ever do that? Should we be criticized if that's it? And then you say, well, let's go a step further. He didn't just text them. He wrote a letter and had it delivered. That's a big deal. Then he sent people. That's a big deal. So John is going the extra mile every opportunity. And then he says, as you've pointed out, and it's not working, obviously, so let's just throw up our hands, and Diotrephes is a lost cause, and he's had his chances. I've done all these things. No, he says, I want to come to you face to face. He's going to confront him face to face. Lauren? Okay. Pardon?
Just a gesture.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? Any way? Yeah, Jake?
It kind of brings to mind like some of the stuff I've been told by coaches. You know, have you ever been being yelled at by a coach and he's just on you for you're messing up, you're doing this, you're just constant correction. And he goes, the reason I'm on you is because I see the potential. You know that, and I think John's seeing potential. He's seeing somebody he loves doing the wrong thing. He's like, we gotta fix this. There's so much at risk.
Yeah. We got to fix Diotrephes. We got to fix this situation because Diotrephes is causing all kinds of problems. And get to that in a moment. So, yeah. Becky?
It just further proves that he's a confident leader. Like he is an example of someone who, believing in God and being steadfast in the truth, gives him that confidence to be the leader that he was meant to be.
Yeah.
Diotrephes was putting people out of the church. He just had to be putting them forcibly out of the local congregation. Only God can put you in and out of church. So is that what you understand there?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's hold that thought. We'll get to that in just a second when we talked about Diotrephes. But yes, I think you're absolutely right. There was some shutting of the doors. All right. Anything else on John? I think all those are.
One thought.
Yeah.
Verse 6, where he says, you will do well to send them on their way. So he's commended them for what they're doing, but I think it's kind of like Onesimus and Philemon. There's still maybe a little bit of a question mark of is he going to do the right thing? And so he uses the opportunity to, do this in a manner worthy of further encouragement. So, I think that gets missed a lot of times. We go to the Diotrephes, but he uses the opportunity. It's just a good, not a tactic, but a good, hey, you're doing good, and you would do well to continue.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need a little bit further nudging to get us to where we need to be. And I think, and that's kind of a bookend where he's going to say, don't imitate what's evil. I think that kind of reinforces this thought. Hey, you'd be good if you do this.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like Paul when Paul commends, you're excelling. Remember what he says? Excel more. Great point.
I was thinking about the word undeterred, and I think that he sees something going on, and he wants to communicate something to the church there, where obviously Diotrephes and it seems like Gaius are the same church. The same body of Christians. It seems like he had sent letters there before. Diotrephes obviously somehow didn't allow them to be read or communicated, however they got to him, but he's undeterred in the fact that to me I get the sense this letter is, while it's written to Gaius and commend him and doing certain things in that, I think I get the purpose that he's saying, I'm going to kind of straighten some of this out, if Diotrephes is doing that, communicating with Gaius that he is going to be coming, and he's, writing to him, pointing out that, and it's, he's undeterred in preaching the truth and teaching the truth and making sure he's addressing error that's going on.
Yeah.
The whole 3 letters are about pointing out pretty candidly those that are attacking his beloved Christians, his fellow Christians.
Yeah. So undeterred, tactful. I sent the letter to the church. Diotrephes wouldn't allow it to be disseminated, however that. So now I'm going to write it and have it delivered to Gaius, addressing the same issues. That's interesting. It's also interesting to me from a tact standpoint. how he approaches Gaius, as has already been pointed out. He's encouraging, he's trying to get him to do even more, to do even well, but he's also paving the way for the potential visit as he's setting this up. And so there seems to be spirit-guided tact that's being used by John. Okay. Anything else on him? And we'll jump to another. Yeah.
Could this be also teaching of the principle, if you have aught with a brother, you go to talk to him about it? I see this principle being taught here to Gaius and to the congregation. And I'm coming to do it in person also.
Yeah. Particularly when he turned it to a personal attack, Diotrephes, to John. He got personal, obviously, accusing us with wicked words. So yeah, I think that's a good point. He's going to deal with it, and following Christ's model of recommendation on that, or commandment on that, to go directly to him. Let's mention Demetrius. There's not a whole lot there. Anything you jumped out at you there about what we might? I mean, I believe, I mentioned this on Sunday, I think it might make sense. I'm not, it just seems to me that he might be the deliverer of the letter, but it doesn't say that there. But regardless, what can we learn about Demetrius, or what can we model from him?
Testimony from everyone, and there's three testimonies there. The testimony of truth testifies about it, and then also John, and those what John testified about.
Yeah. So great. So yeah, if we could be the type of person that when somebody's reporting back to someone, hey, what's the deal with Darren Kenny? Good report. Good report. And who do you think? An interesting phrase, and from the truth itself. That's a strange way to phrase that. If we're talking about reports or testimony or witness, we've got the ones that came back. John is bearing witness. What's the truth itself? Pardon?
The Word. He's following the Word, so the Word bears witness of him too.
Okay.
He's doing it right.
Yeah, okay. And I think, yeah, it's certainly a possibility. Any other thoughts? I don't disagree with it. I think when you read it, there's they'll throw out a couple of different things, and that's absolutely one of them. Any other thought?
It's very similar to verse 3, talking about, Gaius, right? It says, it's talking about the brethren talking to his truth, but it says how you were walking in truth. So I think that's the truth that's, Demetrius is testifying about them too. He's following the truth and walking in the truth.
Yeah, it could be it's almost like a personification potentially of the Word. He's following the Word of the truth. You could say it of the body potentially. Any other option? There's only one other option I can come up with. I wouldn't uncapitalize truth though. I might capitalize it. Is it possible that the truth bore witness of Demetrius? Some have suggested that. I mean, speaking of he may even be, Demetrius may have had an encounter. I mean, we're in 90 AD. It may have had an encounter with Jesus, and he may be referring to Jesus. That seems unlikely, but I just throw it out there. It has been suggested that the truth may actually be the Lord that he's referencing here.
John is an apostle. He had divine revelation too. So.
Yeah. Okay. So the Spirit is revealing to him. That could certainly be the Spirit of truth. So it's some kind of divine truth here. Okay. Anything else about Demetrius that you thought might be worthy of?
Oh, just a question. Luke, Jesus says, be careful when everybody speaks well of you.
Okay.
And here, how do you, what's the, I mean, I have some idea, but I just, what are your thoughts on it?
We can all fall into the problem that if everyone has a good testimony. I think it's a positive statement about him and who he is and that he's received a good testimony, but certainly, absolutely to the point that can lead. Well, other thought you might have had there?
Receiving a testimony, that in my mind, that's people have, they've kind of seen your living and are prepared to say that, as opposed to, I think you could at least think about making the case that's receiving a testimony about how somebody is different than speaking well about someone.
Okay. Thinking though that John is referencing the true character of the man.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
Bill, something else is assuming that Diotrephes is part of Demetrius is the one carrying this letter. You know, I don't know if it's clear, but as if he's the one carrying this letter, you know, to Gaius in that church, and he's surely John informed him that, hey, there's this guy named Diotrephes that's causing all this trouble. So it speaks a lot of Demetrius to go into that situation and carry that letter for John, you know, and do all that where he knows he can receive some sort of persecution or whatever it may be from Diotrephes and maybe his followers.
Yeah, great point. So he's either there in the fray and worthy of being commended for it. So he's in the middle of it, and he's received. They're bearing witness, and the witness is true that he is fighting the good fight here, and possibly going up against Diotrephes, or as we've already talked about, he brought it. If he's bringing the message, he's jumping into the fray. Probably just as ominous. How difficult would that message be? You would have known if you're bringing the message. Sometimes we think, you know, like on the movies, we're going to seal this up and we're going to put that stamp on there, and then we're going to hand it to Demetrius, and Demetrius is just going to go take it. I don't believe that's the way that the apostles disseminated letters. I mean, I think when we talked about this, when we were talking about Epaphroditus and Paul, one would think that Paul and Timothy were involved in the writing of the letter of Philippians, and then Epaphroditus was involved in understanding it because he was going to take it back. It was going to be read. He was going to be there. He might even have to explain it. And so if Demetrius is taking this into this congregation to Gaius, knowing what's going on, knowing that a letter had been written before, been rejected, knowing what's happening with Diotrephes, how about just the willingness to get involved, the willingness to be the courier, to be the messenger, the willingness to weigh in on all this, the willingness to go into a situation where if Diotrephes has done what he's already done, isn't he going to do it again? Most likely. So Demetrius is getting involved in something even as the delivery of the message that would require courage and strength. And so certainly should commend him for that. Any other thoughts on him? How about Gaius? We mentioned several things. Just something jump out that you want to try to incorporate into your life. Either do it or do it better. We mentioned walk in truth. What do we know about Gaius if we just know that somebody knows that he's walking in truth? That's a weird question. Hopefully you followed that.
He gave Paul joy to hear that report.
Yeah. Okay. So John, he brought joy to John for receiving the report. Okay, because his children were walking in truth. Yeah, thank you. Well, I wasn't sure whether it was obvious or too obvious. Yeah, so if you're walking in truth, that's great. But somebody, before it can be reported, this walk is going to be observable, visible, And I think to the point that's already been made, when it must be manifest. Faithfulness is known and reported, so you can see that. And that's one of the points from Gaius that I want to take away, is just not for pride's sake or anything like that, but just when you're doing good, good deeds are noticed, and we should live our lives obvious and known. Other thoughts? Okay, yeah. Love in action, we say, wow, he's feeding his loved ones. Great. Hospitality is shown to those that might turn around and show it to him. Great. He's gone beyond that. He's showing it to people he doesn't even know. Great point. So he's a host that would be above and beyond. Other thoughts about that hospitality? Anything that you want to try to model with his hospitality?
He points out whatever you accomplish, it's, it's certainly in the context of hospitality, but the bigger deal is that you're doing something, right? You're not sitting on the sidelines, and it doesn't take time to parse it out. It's whatever you accomplish, for this. So it's the message is get after it.
Yeah, do something.
Yeah.
Were there people sitting on the sidelines? That's the implication, that Diotrephes has been influencing those. So he's not
I think part
been
of it-
influenced by
The
Diotrephes.
idea is sometimes we get wrapped up and it has to be just right, right? And we don't do anything because we're caught up and we've got to accomplish this. We need to, act faithfully in whatever you accomplish. It's the action part of it, I think, is the emphasis.
Yeah. And what's interesting is it's phrased that this action of showing hospitality is specifically phrased walking in truth. And so you see the correlation between what is walking in truth? Well, I'll tell you one thing walking in truth is showing hospitality. Is it that simple? Absolutely. Financially dealing with a stranger's need.
Yeah, I'm just going to point out that he emphasizes the fact that they were strangers. Sometimes we might use the word hospitality to talk about socializing with other Christians that we know, which is a good thing to do, but really hospitality is aimed more toward people that are traveling through that you may have never met before.
Yeah. Traveling strangers. One version actually calls these messengers traveling strangers.
So for me, I look at this and what I should do or learn from it is, he's talking and pointing out that, Gaius he's taking this upon himself to send them on the way, she said, on the way in a manner worthy of God, right? So for me, it's what can I do and not just wait on the collective to do it, like the congregation to do it. I can give money to the congregation or participate in something organized by the elders or whatever it may be, and that's good, that's all good stuff, but then also, what do I do individually? I have opportunities to do those things individually, and not wait on the group.
Yeah.
So I see Gaius doing that, right? He's committed to that. Certainly there's probably other Christians, and he was probably laying behind a store, right? So, like we saw with every congregation doing the New Testament, but also doing these things like you referenced the Good Samaritan, right? Parable there that Jesus told him to teach. So he went beyond just bandaging up, right? But made sure he came back, he was going to come back and check against his individual responsibility.
Great point. I love that. So let's do a little introspection here then, based on John's comment. Okay. So setting aside everything that this group has been doing, my question to each one of us, myself included, is, okay, get a piece of paper, figuratively, and list out everything you've done to show hospitality to strangers over the past 6 months. Not what you've done to your local brethren here, brothers and sisters, not what you've done to your own family, but what have you done to show hospitality to strangers? And list that out. I'd list that out. And then take a look at that sheet and be encouraged to do more or be utterly ashamed because there's nothing on the sheet. And then ask ourselves, what would John say to that? Is that walking in truth? Is that making the most of your opportunities as an individual? I think that's the challenge. Hopefully, Gaius will challenge us. The other part, anybody want to comment on that?
It just reminds me of a story. A preacher, a person always said, "You did a good lesson," and finally he said something. He said, "Now you've gone to meddling." Now you've gone to meddling.
Yeah.
It does hit home, you know, that figuratively or literally, you know, what have I done?
What have I done? Yeah. And then it's like, okay, what have I done? And then let's just throw it into the context of this. What did he do in the face of what he was up against? Because when you look at Gaius's actions and his being commended for what he's done, and then you look at the fact that he welcomed believers when he was threatened by someone in authority in his own congregation, presumably, not to do it. Don't do it. Stop doing that. And then farther, if you do it, we're kicking you out of this fellowship. That may be my words, but that seems to be the implication of it when he says, puts them out of the church. Anybody have a different take on that? It appears as though Diotrephes is casting out, whatever word you'd use, to put somebody out of the fellowship because they were doing exactly what Gaius was doing. So that even heightens the commendation for him because he was doing it under fire. Other thoughts there? Okay, Diotrephes. What's your thought? This guy's a piece of work, right? How would you describe him? Bully. Great. Evil. Contextually, good.
That's a big ego.
Yeah.
Usurper.
Power hungry. Great. All contextual.
He's obviously still a Christian.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
assume he's.
And isn't it interesting that he doesn't say, and Gaius, while you're at it, I want you to go to Diotrephes and I want you to tell him this. He didn't say that either. He says, I'm going to come and deal with this.
When I read that, to me, it sounds like he's doing whatever he wants and nobody's standing up to him. And that's, John is going to stand up to him.
Yeah. Absolutely. For this reason, verse 10, if I come, I will call attention to his deeds, which he does. He's going to call out those deeds. And then he lists some of them. Unjustly accusing us with wicked words. Wicked words.
Well, mine says wicked nonsense.
Nonsense. Wicked nonsense. So they're untruth. They're wicked. It's slander against Apostle John. Apostle John, the elder. Maybe the last one left. Or close to the last one left. And here comes Diotrephes. So what's going on with this guy? What do you think his motivation is? What's his problem? What's the conflict? That's the question we left. What's his conflict with John, the elder?
So on fire for something or think you're right, when you're trying to lead people, you may have got the wrong idea of what we're supposed to do, but it's so right in your mind. And I can see, maybe he's sitting there going, I'm protecting this congregation by keeping those people out. They were going to be bad for the church. And I'm reading a lot into that, but you could get into that situation very easily and think you're on the right track. You know, there was a time where, you know, Peter told Jesus, you know, that can't happen. He said, "Get behind me, Satan." It's like, even at that point, you can be so passionate, but yet get the message mixed up.
Yeah. Is it possible that his motive was something similar? And Kenny made this point on Sunday, that he's actually talking about 2 John. Don't even listen to this. Did he get it so mixed up? I don't know. What did you have a thought?
Just gonna say, that where it says he went to put himself first and does not acknowledge authority, so it sounds to me like, he is rebellious, and maybe this is some sort of jealousy, and then the way that he's talking, about the wicked nonsense against us, that sounds like he's trying to cause dissension.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever his dreamt up motivation that would lead him to this, there are some serious character flaws going on here that would clearly overshadow, even if he was trying to do in his mind what was right. He loves to be first among them, and I think ultimately that seems to be one of the big problems that I would suggest he might have with John. Is that, okay, here's John, here he is, he's looking at him. Jealousy, I think, is definitely involved in it, because he wants to be first, and John has that status as the elder, as an apostle, and maybe he's trying to transition away from this. You know, it's 98 plus AD, you know, we need to move away from this idea of apostles, because we're out here in the fray, wherever it is in Asia Minor, and we've got to get local control. We've got to have autonomy, and so he's positioned himself to be a leader in the church through jealousy, power hungry, slanderous. So he's got issues. Ultimately, we don't know exactly what the big conflict was. Did you have something, John?
Yeah, just like I said, it just reminds me so much, thinking like, you know, the chief priests, you know, when Jesus came, that they were so much about being looked to as the leaders of, you know, Judaism, that the people looked to them, right, that they missed the Messiah. You know, they missed that this one that came and had the truth, you know, and brought the message, that they were just so caught up in that position of what the people looking to them, they missed who Jesus was.
Yeah.
So much so that obviously they, you know, murdered him, but then here it's kind of like, it seems like Diotrephes is kind of, seems to be maybe that he wants to be first, that he's so driven by that he misses the truth of being the fact that the messenger that's bringing that truth is one of Jesus' apostles, you know, and so he's just ignoring that, as it were. It's not like he didn't know who John was, right, but I don't know, it just seems like that same kind of thing.
Yeah. Good point. So how dysfunctional is this group for this one guy to pull this off? You think about that? I mean, where is someone putting him in his place? How is he keeping letters from John to the church? How is he refusing to welcome Christians? What does this all look like congregationally that would allow him to get into such a position? Dictator, yeah, bully, you mentioned that. So he has risen to a status where he's able to pull this off, to the point where he's going to bully and keep people from helping the traveling, helping or throwing people out. I mean, this is just amazing to me that it would get to that.
People like that are pretty charismatic too, right?
Yeah.
They're not just come across the right way. They don't have any power to begin with. Until they gain influence, you know, with others by being charismatic and winning people over, right?
Yeah.
That's how they gain.
Think about this a little bit more. We'll start with kind of just a couple more thoughts about Diotrephes. And then think about this. And Brother Phil brought this question up, and I think it's a great thing to talk about. In all of the writings of John, but particularly in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, there's this intersection of command and love. And let's talk about that on Sunday. The relationship, you think about commands, you think about love. How do those two interact, and how does John speak of them? And what can we learn from that about obedience? What can we learn about that, about love, as we sort through the connection between command and love? So think about that for Sunday as well. Thanks for all your comments, and we will finish this study up on Sunday.
Well, welcome to our midweek Bible study. It's good to see everyone here tonight. We're going to sing a couple songs, then we'll have some closing comments and the announcements. Our first song will be 199, Where the Roses Never Fade. Let's all sing together. I am going to a city where the streets with gold are laid, where the tree of life is blooming and the roses never fade. Here they bloom but for a season, soon their beauty is decayed. I am going to a city where the roses never fade. In this world we have our troubles, Satan's snares we must evade. We'll be free from all temptation, where the roses never fade. Here they bloom but for a season, soon their beauty is decayed. I am going to a city never fade. Saved one's gone to be with Jesus in their robes of white array. Now are waiting for my coming, where the roses never fade. Here they bloom but for a season, soon their beauty is decayed. I am going to a city where the roses never fade. 229, no, not one. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. None else can heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. No friend like him is so high and holy. No, not one. No, not one. And yet no friend is so meek and lowly. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. There's not an hour that he is not near us. No, not one. No, not one. No night so dark, but his love can cheer us. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one.
Good evening. Just a quick thought to share with you tonight. On Sunday in the high school class, we were looking at 2 John, and in verse 6, it says, "And this is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment, just as you have heard from the beginning, so that you should walk in it." And so we spent a little time going back to John, and in particular, the Gospel of John. Like in verse 14, John 14:15, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." And several other times in that chapter and in other places, it's a consistent message from Jesus, that if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. When we obey God, it needs to come from our hearts. And so I think it follows that if we are struggling to obey God, we first need to look inwardly and examine our hearts. I can say that I love God all that I want, but if I'm continuing in sin, as we've been talking about in 1 John especially, then our actions show that we are acting like we don't love him, even if we say that we do. After all, a tree is known by its fruits. And so using this standard that God has given us, I don't see how do you love God can have a different answer than are you obeying God? Genuine love for God leads to wholehearted obedience, and that certainly doesn't mean we never fail. But love covers a multitude of sins. If our spouses or our parents wouldn't be satisfied with us only sometimes loving them, then why would we expect to be God satisfied if we only occasionally act as though we love him? Or to take another track with it, what's the point of obeying God without loving him? At that point, I think we would simply be trying to demonstrate our own righteousness like the Pharisees, as though just obeying were the end-all, be-all. It doesn't mean anything without love. And we can't fool God into thinking that we love him through mere obedience. To be truly pleasing to God, our obedience must come from our hearts. It has to start there. And so if all this is true and I want to better serve God, it's not a matter of trying harder to obey, trying harder to do the right things or not do the wrong things, but rather an issue of making sure that I love God like I should. Love is the greatest motivation for a relationship and a life of service to God.
Just a few announcements. First, on a personal note, I don't know how he got all those white whiskers. He's too young for that, isn't he? Maybe not. Today, we had the service for Mary. Learned a lot of things about Mary, and we'll miss her. Jerry is still in a great deal of pain. He started a little bit of rehab, and they told him, oh, don't worry about it, it'll get better. So we've got some members here that have gone through that surgery, so they could probably let Jerry know more about that. Craig, they visited his mom this weekend, and he said she's doing a lot better, and better than they really expected. So that's always good news. You just go sometimes and you don't know, so it's good to be able to experience that. And then Ethan Goddard is not feeling well tonight. That's why he and Kelly aren't here. The question of the day has been, how are we doing on finding somebody to come and work with us here at Nashua? And I would have to tell you that Kathy came up with a name for us and communicated with him. And then Linda and I went down to the lectures at Pasadena, Texas, and he and his family came down there. He's from Texas, well, originally from Arkansas. And we had a good visit. We talked about the work here and that they had tons of questions. And we got a call Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah, Monday. And they are wanting to come up and look around and see the congregation here. So it's not necessarily, hopefully, besides Phil and Kristen, everybody else will be here. But on the 7th of July, they will be here. He will be preaching that day. They'll be coming up and looking around. They have 4 children. Drew is 12. Ellie is 14. Davy's 16. And Abby Kate, 2 words. Abby Kate is 18, and she'll be starting at Texas Tech College this year. I told her we had a famous alumni here in Kansas City now from Texas Tech. She knew who that was. So anyway, right now, we're planning on after services, Sunday afternoon sometime, have an open house. Everybody's come over our house and visit with them, questions, or whatever. It's just a visit. We haven't proposed anything or like that, but they are interested in looking up here. He's been at the congregation he's at, I believe, 11 years. So if you ask me more questions, I'll have to make answers up because that's pretty much all the info that I know. But I keep telling everyone and telling myself the Lord will provide when it's time for us to have someone to come and work with us. And so I might just tell you, I think he's 51 years old. I can't think of anything else. So hopefully we'll have some other details about some other things maybe that we can do while they're here. That's all the announcements that I know of, so if you'd stand. Father, we come before you at this evening hour, so thankful for the wonderful rain that you sent our way and the cooler temperatures. We know, Father, that you control everything, and we're so thankful that you blessed us with the rain and the cooler weather. We're thankful, Father, for the time that we were able to spend with Mary and Hadley and Cindy. We know, Father, that our hope in this life is to someday in eternity spend it with you, and we pray that they will be there together with you. We pray, Father, you continue to be with Jerry, be with Craig's mom, be with Ethan, be with Jim and Elva, and any others that need your healing hand. We pray, Father, that you'd be with each of us as we walk our daily lives. As we have been studying, we need to remember to walk in the light, walk in the truth, abstain from evil, but do good to others. Love one another. All these things, in Christ's name we pray. Amen.